involved in early education,
Yes.
right?
And I worked in private schools, in some of the most prestigious private schools in our area. And I transferred here to a local private school. And I thought it was going to be my dream job. And I loved teaching. I taught for, I'd say, 15 years. And I simultaneously found out that I was losing my teaching contract at the same time that I found out I needed to have brain surgery. So my dream job here in Lancaster County took a nosedive, and it was absolutely horrific. It was a horrific time period of my life to have that happen.
I can imagine. Can you kind of walk us through that? What was the brain surgery? What happened?
Well, my story is sort of funny. I had a car accident. That's not funny. But I overturned my car driving to work, and it was just a light rain. It wasn't even a big storm. And I climbed out of the car by myself. I was fine. I dusted myself off. But the EMTs, they said, listen, you just overturned your car, so we really prefer that you go to the hospital and have a CAT scan. Even though you feel okay, you never know what might be there. So I did. I listened to them, and I went and had the CAT scan, and they came out to me, and they said, the good news is you're fine from the accident. The bad news is you need to have this looked at. And they told me that it was called a Chiari malformation.
Okay, what is that?
So it's a birth defect.
Okay.
And when I looked, of course, being a human being, I went on Google and I looked it up. And
it's probably the worst thing you could do. Yeah.
Well, but it was like the opposite of what you assume. Everybody else that I could find online who had a Chiari malformation were like fine. And so I kind of didn't get it looked at maybe as quickly as I should have, because I thought, well, it's really not that big of a deal. Finally did get to a neurologist, and they had me send for an MRI. I had my MRI on a Friday night, and that Monday morning at school, I was still teaching because my contract was not renewed for the following year. It wasn't anything to do with my teaching, mind you. I feel the need to say that.
Throw that in there. Yeah.
But it was that following Monday morning, the neurology company called me, and they were like, can you come right now? And I was like, oh no. When you hear that, usually it would be like, oh, these results aren't that big of a deal, you don't have to come in. But when they said that, I was pretty scared, and I couldn't come right away because I had to teach. And then I think it was the following afternoon I went in, and the neurologist explained to me that it was the worst Chiari he had ever seen. And so basically what it is and what it means is the back of your head is too small for your brain. And so essentially what happens is your brain becomes pushed down and rests on your spinal column. Okay. And so all of your cerebral spinal fluid gets clogged up. And it turned out I was running on 5% cerebral spinal fluid, where the average person is 85 to 100%. Oh my gosh. And so, and he was like, you need to have surgery and fast. And the way it was positioned too was right near my brain stem. So they were really very scared about the possibility of becoming paralyzed, either from a result of the Chiari or from a result of the surgery. So it was kind of a big deal. And so essentially I was dying and didn't know it.
I had no idea.
I had no idea.
Did you have any symptoms at all?
So I had symptoms, but my whole entire life I had been misdiagnosed with other things. Yeah. There was oftentimes stomach upset, which they had diagnosed me with a condition called dyspepsia, which is like a pre-ulcerous condition. It turns out that was completely wrong. It was all due to my brain. And then I fainted frequently, and they constantly checked me for anemia, but the blood results would be fine. So it was just kind of a mystery until this car accident happened. So we joke now, it was like the life-saving car accident. I mean, who would think? So given that it was so bad, I had to really interview different surgeons, and I naturally went to Philadelphia thinking, someone in Philadelphia would obviously know how, which they did. I did interview many surgeons, but there were a lot of them didn't even want to touch me because the severity of it was so bad that they were afraid, I guess, that I would die in surgery.
So what did the surgery, sorry to interrupt, but what did the surgery involve? How did they actually, did they just remove the part that's going on?
So okay, so I'm not as good as explaining this as my boyfriend is, because once I found out what was going on, I stopped with the Google.
Yeah.
I was like, if I Google this or YouTube this, I am not going to go through with this surgery. So I let him...
Just do what you have to do back there.
Right. So, but basically, and hopefully I tell this correctly, but each surgeon does it differently too, mind you. But my surgeon, who was in Pittsburgh, we wound up finding someone in Pittsburgh who was a specialist for Chiari. And so I feel like this is going to be gruesome. They cut the back of your head. They remove pieces of your skull to make room, and then they perform, so it's called a craniectomy and a something else, where they cut the membranes open and they basically squish your brain back into place. And so when they removed the skull, they had to make space, and then this particular surgeon put a 25-screw titanium plate in the back of my head. Some surgeons don't do that. It all depends on who you talk to. They all have different techniques. But I now have a plate in my head, which is, yeah, which is another thing that I like to joke about, because if you can't laugh, but I like to joke that it doesn't set off any of the alarms at the airport or anything like that. When I was well and walking properly again, like that was the first thing that I wanted to do, was go through the metal detector. Like, am I going to set it off? It doesn't. It's kind of disappointing, but... So yeah, we settled on a surgeon in Pittsburgh, and actually the plate in my head is named after him. He created it and patented it. So we figured if he has plates for heads that are named after him, he's probably a go. Yeah.
What was it like leading up to the surgery? Did it happen pretty quickly then, I'm assuming?
We took about, I want to say, 2 or 3 months to find the appropriate surgeon. So yeah, I mean, pretty quickly. And when we met this surgeon, he was like, okay, I can do it tomorrow or the following day. And we were like, no, we're not ready to just yet. We want to get some more opinions. So we are the ones who sort of drug it out. But the doctors did sort of say that we needed to move quickly, because they were very concerned that, like I said, the chance of becoming paralyzed or the chance of not waking up was high for me. So it was...
So if you would
scary.
have not have gotten into that accident, is that what would have happened? You would have
It's a distinct possibility that I eventually would have lost the ability to walk, or maybe become incontinent, or there's a kind of a plethora of things that could happen as a result for not taking care of it. And like I said, majority of people don't even have to have surgery. Theirs is so slight, but so it's like a herniation. So where the brain was coming down, mine was just so much larger than what they typically see, that it was like, whoa, we need to take care of this and now. And so they fixed it, they opened me all up, and then there was a rush of cerebral spinal fluid after that. So I went from 5% to almost 100%, I believe, and that's like overnight. So right now, doctors still don't know what that really means. So they know that it cleans and feeds the brain. That's the purpose. But they don't know what else the cerebral spinal fluid really does. And so they don't know the effects that could have on me just in my daily living, having that rush of...
Have you noticed anything different, or do you feel different?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I do feel different, and unfortunately, a lot of my symptoms have actually increased since the surgery rather than improving. So I actually have more fainting spells and more lightheadedness than I did before, and so that blockage also causes pockets of spinal fluid down your spine. They're called syrinxes, and I had a few of those. So the normal person's spinal canal there, it's like the thread, or like the space of a hair follicle, and mine more ballooned up to the size of a human's pinky. So I had all this severe back trouble that was also misdiagnosed. We all thought, because I worked with small children, that being crunched over all the time caused the pain, but it turned out to be these syrinxes. And unfortunately, the syrinxes have improved, but my pain has worsened rather than improving, which is, so I'm kind of a medical mystery at this point for a plethora of reasons. They don't really know why I'm not radically improving as they had hoped, and they just don't even know why it was as severe as it was. Yeah.
Well, during your recovery, you kind of had this, I guess, epiphany of what you wanted to do since teaching was kind of ending. You switched gears, so can you tell me about that a little bit?
So I knew I wasn't returning back to school because the surgery happened right at the end of the school year. And that was bleak, to take away somebody's hope or, I don't know, goal of something to look forward to and to strive for, hope to recover to. That was scary for me to think, like, I'll recover and then now what am I going to do? But it was 2 days after my brain surgery. I was on Instagram, and the funny thing is I am not like a social media person by any means, but if you're recovering from brain surgery, what else are you going to do with your time? So I had Instagram, and I found Carriage House Birth Foundation, they're called, and they're located in New York City. And they're kind of like, this is so cheesy, but they're kind of like celebrity doulas. And they were going to have their first ever doula training. And I had some months to get myself healed well enough to go and get myself to New York City and take the training. And it was kind of like the stars aligned. I kind of felt like, wow, like one door closed and now this other door is opening. And I would be a fool not to try to take this opportunity. And that's exactly what I did. And I mean, when I first came from surgery, I was walking with a walker and graduated to a walking stick. Like, this was not an easy feat. I didn't just like hop to it and get back to normal,
Did you use that as kind of a goal, like something to shoot for as far as your recovery?
Oh, definitely. It was just so beneficial for me to think like, okay, I have something to do. I have some hope. I have something to gain if I can get through this. Because without that, it could be very dismal, very dismal. To have been like a regular functioning girl who can walk 6 miles to someone who's using a walker, that's disappointing, to say the least.
But you did it. You made it through, and you got to New York, so tell me about that.
Yeah, so I got to New York, and I'm not a well-traveled individual, so this was like a big deal for me. And there's 3 directors to Carriage House, and like I said, they're like kind of like celebrity doulas, so that in itself was pretty rad. And it was a whole weekend with like-minded women, and of course it was all women. There are male doulas, but they're hard to find. So of course it was all women, and we just took the training and bonded and just had this insanely unique, fantastic experience. And then from there was all sorts of other continued ed requirements that you had to follow to become certified, and I did it. I became certified.
That's awesome. Did you have an interest in that at all before the surgery, or was it just after surgery you were like, that was it? You just found what you wanted to do?
It sort of is kind of like both. So it sort of was spur of the moment finding it on Instagram the way that I did, but also when I had my son very young. He's 18 years old now. I was just telling you guys, he started college. But I was just 17 years old when I had him, which is a big deal. And at that time, I had him, it was in a hospital setting, but I was dead set on having a natural birth. I was terrified of an epidural. I had seen some crazy show on television that made me think it could make me paralyzed, which small % chance it could, but it was an irrational fear. So I really wanted this natural birth, and I had midwives, and my midwives were so fantastic, and the experience was just so amazing, so comforting for somebody at my age where that could have been a really scary ordeal, that I had always been very interested and kept myself well educated in sort of like holistic health and the benefits of knowing what you're capable of doing throughout your pregnancy and labor and delivery. And I'm a strong advocate in the belief that birth is birth. So no matter what it looks like, it's huge. And I am not here to say that only natural birth is the right way to go and that's it. I believe that I've supported... Oh! You can, like I said, bump him down if he's... So I've supported women even throughout C-section, so I don't want you to think that it's just like a natural thing for me, but I definitely believe that empowering yourself with knowledge is important, and so that's always something I've been passionate about. That's Beowulf.
Oh, I like your name. I'm an English teacher, so I like that.
Yes. Yes, he's like I said, he's overly friendly to the point of embarrassment. So, yeah, so it's a little bit of both. I have strong opinions about things in the medical society and when it comes to women's health, but I also did it on the spur of the moment, fly by the seat of my pants kind of thing as well.
So once you finished your training in New York and got the certifications, I guess how did you get started on your own?
Well, Facebook is huge. And again, like I said, I am not a social media person, but I have like become a social media person because it's just so key, I think, in trying to run a business. And I set up my own website as well. So here in Lancaster County, it's definitely a word of mouth thing. Sorry. It's definitely a word of mouth thing. Like, I don't know, it's funny. People here in Lancaster County, they haven't heard of Carriage House Birth Foundation, whereas out towards Philadelphia or obviously in New York, they're a big deal. But here in Lancaster County, I've sort of been faced with like having to figure it out all by myself. It's kind of a rat race. Like, you just kind of have to figure it out and network and just get your name out there the best way that you can and hope for the best. A lot of my clients do come from Philadelphia area because it's more of a known thing towards bigger cities, and not that Lancaster, I mean, I love Lancaster City, but it's not quite as big as Philadelphia.
So what kind of services do you provide? I guess what's involved in your business?
So I always tell potential clients that as a doula, I do not do any sort of medical work. So I'm not there to check somebody's cervix and see how dilated they are. I'm there for emotional support, physical support, and spiritual support. So empathetic touch is huge. You would be surprised at how little touch is involved, especially in a hospital setting for a laboring woman, and you would be surprised how beneficial it really is. And that could just be, anything from a really good back massage, or it could be just grounding someone by putting your hands on their shoulders. Touch is just so important. And I also do work with essential oils, which I always joke with people is kind of like you're either really into it or you're not, because women when they're pregnant are very sensitive. But then women when they're laboring can be even more sensitive. So smells can be a huge turnoff. So I definitely offer it as a service, but it's not like a set in stone have to have thing, because everybody is so different and every birth is so different that you have to really be willing to change things up and be flexible. I think flexibility is key, and you have to be ready to get yelled at. I mean, women yell when, you have to have a thick skin, very thick skin, and that's okay. That's part of the job. Yeah. So, and I've also started learning to make tinctures, which is really exciting. So it's just basically, it's like herbal medicine, really. And lavender is huge for me. It's such a basic, almost like a stereotypical oil or herb, but I really swear by it, and it's really good for labor and delivery. So I frequently work with lavender.
You said I just looked on the website, that you like to be an advocate for, the woman, I guess, with doctors and nurses and like traditional medicine. What does that mean to you?
So I'm gonna correct you here.
Okay, sure.
So actually, it's not about me being an advocate. It's about helping families become advocates for themselves. Okay. So it's a delicate dance as to not step on the toes of the medical professionals, because you can become really unpopular really quickly as a doula in a hospital setting if you're overbearing. Yet you don't. So oftentimes nowadays women do not want episiotomies, and they are still performed. So it can come down to, if a woman is not in a state where she can advocate for herself, it can come down to looking at her partner, her birth partner, whoever it might be, and saying, please remind them that she does not want an episiotomy, or now's a good time for her to get on her hands and knees to try that position, because doctors really can be so quick to want to perform cesarean sections in my opinion, unnecessarily, and without giving a woman a real chance to labor through it. So, again, it's a delicate dance between not stepping on toes and figuring out how to still really empower a woman so she can have the birth, whatever it looks like, that makes her feel good at the end of the day. Because you would be surprised how many women leave their birth experience feeling disappointed or ashamed or even violated because a procedure has been performed that she did not agree to. So it's a very controversial topic right now in the media. If you do a little research on Google, you'll see it's a pretty big topic. And I'm just one small person, but I feel like if I can try to do my best to improve it just for one person, I can feel good about it.
That's great. So what are you hoping for as far as the future? Just kind of helping as many people as you can. I mean, are you loving this? Because it's been just since your surgery and you got the certification.
I do. I absolutely love it. I mean, I get to be there when babies come to the world. It's fantastic and beautiful, and to help families is fantastic and beautiful. But I've also started back to school again. So it was recommended by my brain surgeon, actually, that I return to school to help with my memory, because one of the things that has really declined since surgery is my memory. It's been a battle. It's been very frustrating. So they're recommending that it's a muscle, so I have to exercise that muscle just like any other body part. And so my goal, so long story short, I've returned and I've gone to Millersville University, and I'm going for psychology. Okay. So that being said, doula work, there's a high turnover rate, there's a high burnout rate, and that is not what I'm indicating here, because I do love it. My goal, my long-term goal, and it could take me forever, who knows, with my illness, but I want to become a clinical psychologist so I can counsel people, whether it be marriage counseling or prenatal or postpartum work, or even transitions for siblings, because we oftentimes forget about the older siblings and how a new baby can be such a difficult transition. So the goal is to marry the two practices, so clinical psychology with doula work, which I think is a really unique thing, and I haven't seen it anywhere, let alone here in Lancaster County.
I'm so glad that from like such a scary circumstance, you came out with these goals and kind of achieving these things you didn't know you could do. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's huge, because it would have been really easy to just like lay down and die, or like get stuck in a rut, and everybody knows it's just common sense that you have to keep moving in order to get strong, or you will stay weak. So it's like you had asked before, it's been hugely beneficial to have a goal and hope at the end of the tunnel.